Hello, my name is Harry Bradford. Thank you for watching my presentation for QXL 4446, Issues in Forensic Linguistics. This video presentation focuses on one aspect of authorship attribution, namely the authentication of suicide notes, and more specifically, the correlation between popular culture and simulated suicide notes. To begin with, I will first define authorship attribution, which is the role of a forensic linguist to determine the author of a text. This can be for reasons of suspected plagiarism, where the original writer is not known, or validity, as in the case of suicide notes. There are many reasons the forensic linguist may get called to analyse a suicide note. The most common is to ensure the validity of said note. If there is any suspicion of tampering or faking the note, then the linguist will be called in to analyse the material to determine the author of the text. This can range from a family faking a note for insurance purposes to more extreme cases, such as John Olson's Betrayed by a Full Stop, in which a husband kills his wife and fakes the suicide note afterwards. The main problem for forensic linguists across their entire field is the lack of primary material, whether it is in compiling a corpus or creating a portfolio for quantitative or qualitative analysis. The police will only ever give the linguist as much information as they think the linguist needs. This is particularly challenging in the field of suicide note analysis, as the notes themselves are often short, and this is even assuming a note is left at all, or not hidden by family members following discovery. Now that the linguist's role in suicide note analysis is understood, it is important to know the act itself. The dictionary definition of suicide is the act of killing oneself intentionally. According to the World Health Organization, the United Kingdom is 37th in the world for suicide rates, with 11.8 deaths per 100,000. And the Office for National Statistics shows a gradual increase in suicides in recent years, especially for young men, who are nearly 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. Due to these startling statistics, politicians in Britain are gathering in 2013 to discuss what can be done to change public attitude and awareness of suicide and self-destruction. It is important to note, however, that the Samaritans compiled an extensive list of reasons why an individual may commit suicide, and it is clear that there is no easy explanation or factor. The hardest thing for a non-suicidal person to do is to comprehend the mindset of a sufferer of depression or suicidal tendencies. Without being in that individual's mental state, it is impossible to comprehend the suffering from an outside perspective. Despite the complexities of an individual's motivations, suicide note analysis is the only time a forensic linguist is allowed to ask, why? We are not psychologists, and it is not the job of a linguist to mentally profile an individual. However, in this particular field, it is key. This is because it is the question that everybody asks. The 2006 documentary The Bridge shows families coming to terms with their loved one's suicide, which occurred on the Golden Gate Bridge. The families are interviewed extensively, yet the only question they each focus on is why. Some individuals claim their loved ones were suffering from mental health problems or lack of work, whereas one individual sees it as against his religion and believes his sister was murdered as opposed to suicidal. The linguist must also ask the question why, as if an individual were to attempt to fake a note or stage a suicide, then they too will try to include the populist views on suicide. By understanding the populist reasons why an individual would kill themselves, the linguist can then plan what a simulated text would look like. As the aforementioned statistics show, suicide is a deeply ingrained factor within British society, and as culture mirrors society, it is a fair comment that within popular culture there are many examples of self-harm and suicide. These examples follow the populist expectations of what a person suffering from self-harm is thinking, and are often wholly inaccurate, as they are written by individuals trying to put themselves in an impossible position. As mentioned previously, it is impossible to comprehend the mindset of somebody committing suicide. The reason for writers adding suicide into their work is often just for added conflict and grief, or as Channel 4 call it, grit and realism. This may seem harsh, but many of today's soaps and dramas contain storylines designed to shock, including representations of rape, abuse, and suicide, all for added dramatic power and, to some extent, perverse titillation on behalf of the viewer. It is the exact same reason people slow down at car crashes, except with adverts. Some examples of suicide in popular culture include The Shawshank Redemption, a deeply emotional character study of somebody who just can't go on; Million Dollar Baby, a deeply emotional character study of someone who just can't go on; The Others, an emotional character study of a mother coming to terms with the murder of her children who just can't go on; and Les Miserables, which is essentially the same cardboard cutout of an emotional character who just can't go on, but with the added entertainment of a musical number. What is important to acknowledge is that each of these characters, regardless of genre, age, gender, or date of release, all follow the same deeply ingrained social expectations of a suicidal individual. They all follow the same form of confessional as Shakespeare's tragic protagonists, Romeo and Juliet, who, via a drawn-out monologue, confess their inability to continue in society and thus end it all. What this shows is that in over 400 years, the populist view of suicide hasn't changed much at all. Ergo, if culture mirrors society, then eventually society must mirror culture. This can be seen in language all the time. Think of how many people you know copy famous characters' catchphrases. Therefore, if an individual were to fake a suicide note, they would draw inspiration from those seen in popular culture. With this knowledge now known, forensic linguists can compile a list of common traits found in suicide notes in the media that would hint at a faked note. Comparatively, real-life suicide notes have many of their own traits. In 1957, Schneidman and Faberbrau compiled a corpus or collection of real suicide notes to look for common themes. Their discoveries were startling. In reality, the notes contained high levels of discomfort statements, with words such as hatred and vengeance scoring highly. Similarly, there were also many examples of what we call neutral statements, such as lists and crude versions of an individual's will. Olson's corpus in the same field specifically targeted words and showed that in both fake and real notes, the word sorry appeared an equal number of times. What his corpus did show was that emotive language was present in real notes and almost not at all in fake ones. Almost as if those trying to fake suicide take all the humanity of a note, as opposed to showing the tipping point of a human condition and the emotions that come with it. With a corpus of fake notes and a corpus of real ones, the forensic linguist now has guidelines of what is to be expected between a real and a fake note. Although this is not enough to warrant a decision on complete authenticity, it is a doorway into a larger investigation and critical evidence for the courts. In conclusion, there is a massive distinction between real and fake notes. Fake notes score highly on the popular misconceptions seen in popular culture, which are often overly dramatic while simultaneously being vague and detached. In reality, the notes are emotional and directional with requests to loved ones. This research also shows that popular culture directly influences faked suicide notes in much the same way as faked and cliched ransom notes, and this is a theme that has been virtually unchanged in over 400 years, thus aiding the forensic linguist in authorship attribution. Thank you for watching this iMovie presentation on suicide note analysis.